behalf of Carney Africa, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to each and every one of you here today. Thank you for taking the time to participate in this very important International Women's Day event. This is a flagship event here for us at Carney and is celebrated across all of our offices across the globe. Each year, we are committed to taking a step back, recognizing the importance of this day, and playing an active role in having the courageous conversations needed to drive gender inclusion. Dedicating effort to this event is well aligned with our founding purpose of essential rightness and our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. The theme for today's event is aptly centered around being bold. Boldness is a core value for us here at Carney. It requires courage and resilience to ask the difficult questions and solve complex problems in an innovative way. It is a critical success factor for us in redefining the role of women in the workplace. As the renowned author Brené Brown has said, a critical mass of brave leaders is the foundation, of an intentionally courageous culture. Each time we are brave with our lives, we make the people around us a little braver and our organizations bolder and stronger. I truly believe that Carney walks the talk in this regard. It has become a family and a home for me, a safe space that has enabled me and empowered me to work and contribute in a diverse and inclusive environment, surrounded by strong, bold, and courageous women and men, and has allowed me to remain authentic to who I truly am. The esteemed panel of speakers here today will inspire us with their respective journeys of boldness and courage. These are women of strength and remind me of a quote by the poet Luke Esther. A strong woman knows she has strength enough for the journey, but a woman of strength knows it is in the journey that she will become strong. Let's hear it for all the strong and courageous women in the room here today. Thank you very much. With that, it is my great privilege and honor to introduce our courageous and bold leader at Carney, Mr. Theo Sibiya, Managing Partner of the Africa Unit since 2018. I always get this date wrong. I have been fortunate enough to have Theo as my mentor for my entire consulting career. He truly leads by example in advancing the DE&I agenda at Carney and has empowered us to be part of this great journey with him. It is said we stand on the shoulders of giants. As the first woman of color who is a principal at Carney, that holds so true for me. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Mr. Theo Sibiya.
Thanks so much, Khadija, for the kind words. I don't necessarily agree that I deserve much of what you've said, but it's been a pleasure working with you, and I can see that my job is severely under threat already. Thanks very much, and a warm welcome to everyone here today to our signature International Women's Day event. On behalf of Carney Global, but in particular Carney Africa, it's our privilege and pleasure to host you all. Our theme has already been mentioned by Khadija, to boldly go where others have not tread before, and it really resonates with me for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, it embodies the value, the boldness value that I hold so dear. It's probably my favorite value of all our Carney values. But not only does it capture that value, but it embodies so much more. It embodies doing things differently. It also embodies pushing the boundaries through curiosity. It's also about passion and belief, and something that may not have been tested, and it's about pushing yourself to explore uncharted terrain. But most importantly, this theme for me talks about action. It's all good and well to talk, and we do talk a lot, especially as consultants, we talk a lot, but we need to act. And as the African proverb goes, dreaming of eating will not satisfy the hungry man. Action is required to effect change. Today, the Africa leg of the 2023 International Women's Day Forum explores how 3 incredible women have taken action. I can't wait to hear your stories. They have been bold and made changes in their workplace and communities and the environment while staying true to themselves, their passion, and their purpose. Thank you for joining us, Niven, Sarah, Zandile. No doubt your journeys will inspire and motivate us to be the difference we want to see in the world. Before I hand over to Nothandra, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Carney Women's Forum, who have never wavered in their purpose. Over the years, they have achieved much, but in the last 12 months, they've achieved some incredible successes. First and foremost, Carney Africa is now a member of the 30% Southern Africa Club, aimed at achieving 30% gender balance at all senior decision-making tables, including boards and C-suites, something that we're very proud of. Secondly, we have partnered with Business Engage, who conducted research to track the status of gender on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange listed boards in South Africa and co-hosted events during the year, such as Gender Intelligence Conference. We're an active member of the Voices of Change movement, a platform for meaningful commitment, bringing the key corporate partners together to harness the power of diversity. More recently, and another achievement, we signed up to the UN's Women Empowerment Principles and stand in solidarity with the United Nations to end gender inequality in the workplace, marketplace, and community. Internally, we've also carried out a number of activities, and we run several initiatives to empower and equip our women and men through allyship training, the masterclass series, fireside chats, and leadership panels on diversity, equity, and inclusion. The Carney Africa women promoted into senior leadership, of which Khadija and Francis and a couple of others are amongst those, demonstrate our commitment to the development and advancement and recognition and representation of women as senior leaders and role models in our organization. It would be amiss of me not to mention one special woman who has really transformed our activity in this area. A special thanks to Jo. Jo has been the engine and the powerhouse behind much of what we have been able to achieve, especially in the last 12 months. Without your boldness, your drive and passion, we wouldn't be where we are today, Jo. And I thank you so much for what you've done for the firm. And to everyone else in our firm, the consultants, management services, all the people that we work and interact with on a regular basis, thank you all for being a part of our journey to a more inclusive, caring, and sustainable world. I leave you with a promise that we'll continue to stand tall in our purpose. We must be better. We must enable. And we have to intentionally look for ways of including more communities in the work that we do. We must boldly go where others have not tread before. I thank you.
To start us off, we have a very exciting speaker joining us, Naveen Pasma. She has held executive positions since the age of 29, in a career that has spanned multiple roles and sectors. Before starting her own consultancy and embarking on her PhD in organizational behavior, her positions included being CEO of the Business Women's Association, head of the Saab Academy at the South African Reserve Bank, as well as head of leadership and culture for the Standard Bank Group. Having started her career as a strategy consultant, so we hope that you feel at home with us today, she is now a strategy and culture facilitator for global clients in industries diverse as financial services, retail, media, and manufacturing. She is also a Harvard Business Review contributor, a part-time tutor at the Cambridge University's Institute for Sustainability Leadership, and an expert lecturer and facilitator on women's leadership development programs around the world. Naveen, it is a true honor to have you with us today. Thank you for sharing your journey with us, and I, as I'm sure many others, are very much looking forward to the gems that you will impart on us today. Thank you.
Right, I'm going to stand down here because one of the less intelligent things I did this morning was leave my glasses at home. So I can't see the timer from up there. So I'm going to see everyone from down here. And it really is lovely to be here. I had such a fantastic International Women's Day event last year, and CJ, who was there, pitched us up this morning. So I think, oh, well, this is just wonderful. And to do anything with the marvelous Jo is a treat in and of itself. So I'm here to talk about, if you don't do politics, politics will do you. And let me tell you, this was a journey I had to go on through my career. The things I did not know about this subject. If you'd asked me a few years ago about this topic of politics, you would have probably heard me screaming from Sandton in Pretoria because I was so allergic to the subject. Like, politics, no, do me a favor. I mean, that's the stuff that saps your energy, saps your will to live. It's the junk that distracts you from actually just doing your job and getting on with things. And I see a couple of nodding heads already. Well, I've got half an hour and a few minutes for questions and answers. Let me see how much of my deeply entrenched myths around this I can help bust for you, because I have found that the myths around this stuff, man, they're as widespread as they are wrong, and they are as mistaken as they are naive. So sorry that I'm calling you naive, and it's not even 11:45 on a Monday morning, but I was naive. We're all naive around this subject. And so what I'd like to do is take you through two things. The first is give you 3 lessons, 3 things to think about when it comes to political will. Actually wanting to get involved in this stuff instead of running away screaming. The second thing is around political skill. Because will is necessary, in fact it's critical, but it's not sufficient. You actually need to know how to do some of this stuff. And so, well, where will you start? I will tell you 3 things that you can think about. So let's start with political will. First thing I want to tell you is when it comes to politics, it really does, as with many things in life, help if you know what you're talking about. And actually, for all of my career, until I started researching this and writing about it 5 years ago, and now suddenly I'm a global expert, who knew? And colleagues of mine at the Reserve Bank in particular and at other places said, but Niven, you were so terrible at this stuff, and now you're teaching people. Yes, precisely because I was so terrible, I am now teaching people. I didn't actually know what I was talking about. Because we tend to think of politics as only the toxic, only the Machiavellian. So tell me, give me some words. If I say the word, or the words, office politics, what are some of the words that come to mind for you? Bias? Yeah, I mean, what a fabulous word. Let me go to the office today and get involved in things that are full of bias. Yeah. Okay, what else? Corporate? Ah, I'm going to bust a myth there. Okay. Backstabbing. Agendas. Water cooler conversations. Keep going. Boys Club. CJ, you're on a roll this morning. Okay, keep going. Give me 2 or 3 more. Salaries. Many other things besides, yes. 1 or 2 more. Glass ceiling. Yeah, I mean, on a Women's Day, we can talk about stiletto ceiling. We can talk about all kinds of things. Superficial. Anybody notice anything about those approximately 10 words that were thrown out? All negative, yes. All negative. And look, this happens every time I lecture about this subject. I often start a workshop or a lecture and I get people to fill in a word cloud on Mentimeter. Whew. And I say, look, this is not being recorded, so say what you want, good, bad, or ugly, and if you need to swear, swear. And I've had some hideous words come through on those word clouds. Heartbreaking was a word that came through a few months ago. Heartbreaking. This is what this stuff is. Well, I have to tell you, it can be those things, no question. I mean, none of us were born yesterday. All of us have probably seen more than one hideous thing in our career. But it does not have to only be those things. And this is what I didn't know. And I didn't know what I was not talking about, which is the full range of the informal, the unofficial, the behind-the-scenes things that go on in all organizations, which I'll come back to, where things get shared, information gets shared, opportunities get shared. You get support, you give support. You hear about things, you tell other people things. And this informal, unofficial, behind-the-scenes space, it is everywhere. But it is not something that we talk about, and we certainly don't teach people about it. And so, you can choose, it's your life, it's your career, make whatever choice makes you happy. You can absolutely choose not to get involved in this informal, unofficial space. But in my opinion, in my experience, choosing not to get involved in this stuff, man, that's like playing tennis on half the court, rugby on half the field, soccer on half the pitch, because in most organizations, that's where a lot of the stuff happens. A lot of the real conversations, the real opportunities, or lack of them. And so know that of course there are hideous politics, really heartbreaking stuff, but there is an entire range of ways that you can manage your stakeholders, you can build your reputation, you can build your power, you can use your influence. Perfectly ethical, perfectly constructive, perfectly legitimate. Not just for you, but for your team. Because I had a delegate on a workshop a few months ago, working for an astonishingly impressive woman, she said. Really, really a wonderful leader in a million ways. And then she finishes the story by saying, no, but I'm actually leaving her team. Okay, well, fill in the gaps for me. How do you leave the team of someone you like so much? She said because she refuses to play the politics. She refuses to have the meetings before the meetings, the conversations after the meetings, to pick up the phone and to lay the groundwork for what we as a team need to do. And we can't get things done if she's not laying that groundwork. And so I have a fabulous connection on LinkedIn, Denny O'Connell. He looks to be quite senior. I'll probably never meet this man, but I loved what he said on one of my LinkedIn posts a few months ago. And he said, yeah, when it works for us, then it's strategy. It's only when it works against us, then politics. It's the same stuff. It's always the same stuff. Second one is, politics are everywhere. And this is often where I hear the sound of breaking hearts. Yeah, I hear a few. Tinkle, tinkle. And I'm really sorry to have to break your heart. But, if you are fantasizing about this incredible place that one day you're going to find where there's just no politics, well, think again, okay? Because you're not going to find it. I have worked, as was kindly said, I've worked in the public sector, I've worked in the corporate sector, I've worked in NGOs, I've worked in South Africa, I've worked all around the world. This stuff is everywhere. I've even had delegates say, man, even in your families, you've got politics. Yeah, violent nodding overhead here. I mention a story in my book, which I love, of a friend who left corporate. Other way around. She left a church. So she'd been a church minister for 10 years, led a congregation, and thought, this is lovely, and I've really enjoyed it, but I want a bit of a change. So she went into a corporate, and the one thing that she was really nervous about was corporate politics. She thought, no, I can figure it out. About 3 months after she had started, I had a coffee with her. I said, how's it going? Loving it. Such a change from leading a church congregation. Well, you don't say. And I said, and the corporate politics? How are you coping? She said, oh, Niven. Do me a favor. Corporate politics compared to church politics. There's no comparison. So look, you are going to find politics, like I say, anywhere you go. Only thing that's going to be different is the degree of politicization and the nature of those politics. Minimally, moderately, highly politicized environments, you've got to suck that up. You've got to figure out if this is something you want to get involved in and to what degree, and find the skills. Pathologically politicized environments, though, are toxic. Can you just repress that timer that's gone? And toxic is another word. It's a synonym for what? Poison. What is poison designed to do? Kill. Let me tell you that toxic environments, toxic political environments will kill you. And that's not an overblown metaphor. That is literally true. I had a colleague who had 3 heart attacks in 18 months working for the bully that we were working for. I've had a young delegate come to me and tell me that in her first job, the first piece of advice that she got from her first manager ever, and the first person in her family to go to university and to take on a professional job, the gem of the advice, in this place, you either pull up your socks or you pull down your pants. Okay? And then the worst story that I've heard so far, and I hope it is the worst story I ever hear, but life is a way of surprising you. A friend of mine is a personal trainer, and she has a client that has been battling pancreatic cancer since last year. And it's not a pleasant cancer, and she's not in a good way, and she's tried everything, the chemo, the surgery, what have you, and it was just about delaying the inevitable, but not postponing it, or postponing it rather than preventing it. And she said she saw this friend of hers, this client of hers, and she's my height, so kind of average height, but she weighs about 40 kilos. This is what the toll that this cancer has taken on her has been. And Vicky said to her, so how are you coping? She said, no, of course it's dreadful and devastating, but she said, this has actually been the best year of my life. I mean, I've had cancer. I know it can teach you many things and give you many gifts of understanding yourself and your life. That is not what she said, though. She said, this has been the best year of her life. And so Vicky looked at her and she said, what? And bear in mind, this is an executive at a listed company. She had power, she had influence, she had all manner of agency. She said, it's been the best year of my life because for the whole year, I haven't had to go to work. Fighting for your life is better than going into the office. That's toxic, okay? If you are in a toxic environment, I have 3 words. And this is not just my experience, it's what all the research says. Anybody want to take a guess what those 3 words might be? Get out now. Yes, exactly. Run like hell. You're not going to change it. It's abuse. And abuse very seldom changes. The third thing, the stuff matters. If you think it's a distraction from your job, no. Especially the more senior you become, it is your job. Because it's the people below you who are doing the technical work. You need to be navigating the landscape. If you don't believe me, this is a case study that I've put together from Rita McGrath. Some of you may know her work. She's a professor of strategy and innovation at Columbia Business School. And she just mentioned this 1 or 2 lines in one of her books. And I thought, no, but this is intriguing. Let me go and understand more. And so I did a lot of research and have a bit of a case study to share with you. So have a look. Anybody know who that guy is? Good. Anybody know anything about that company? Okay, so tell me what you know. 80s. Yes, there were many things that were good about the 80s. The fashions were not one of them. Okay. Obsolete? Yes. What else? 80s and obsolete. Guys, I need more than this. Disrupted, exactly, Joe. That's the story that we know about Blockbusters. For those of you who weren't around, they were a DVD and video rental shop. What are you laughing at? Nobody knows what DVDs is. Oh, I've missed this. You can fill me in the break. So rented this stuff out. They were all over the world, including in South Africa. And there is now 1 left in the world, in Oregon. You want to have an old school video experience? You go to Blockbusters, you get your DVD, you go home, you play it on whatever device you can. I mean, what plays DVDs nowadays? You watch your DVD and you take it back. And the story, and for me as an ex-strategy consultant, I thought I knew the story. Disrupted, obsolete, strategic blindness, incumbent arrogance, all of that stuff. Great story. But never let the facts stand in the way of a good story. And that's Blockbuster and John Antioco, the CEO. And this is a graph from Harvard Business Review around what happened when he went to Blockbuster. Came in, built this company up, almost doubled in size, late 1900s, that sounds funny. Late last century, early this century, $6 billion company. So as an Afrikaans friend of mine would say, an oulike bedragie. We're talking serious money. $6 billion over 20 years ago. Listed, impressive, successful. And then a trajectory down. So what happened? Well, my slides went blank. The first thing that happened, Netflix. Right, so the disruption, people often know about the Netflix role in the story, where Reed Hastings, the founder of Netflix, was incredibly irritated the one day. He had hired some DVDs, took them back to Blockbusters. He gets fined for bringing these DVDs back late. I mean, I was the bane of our school librarian's life, the whole of school. I mean, I think I single-handedly funded the one wing of our school because I was always taking my library books back late. But, okay, so you're bringing it back late, that's the deal, pay the fine. Well, he got so annoyed, he's like, no, do me a favor, this stinks. So he started at Netflix, and he could at the time because we'd moved from videos, those big bulky things, to DVDs. And so with Netflix, you could have a DVD posted to you. And so you could watch it for as long as you wanted, no late return fees. And that was what he did to disrupt Blockbuster. And then the dot-com crash, and suddenly Netflix, now with a much better logo, has its back up against a wall. Okay, so what are we going to do? Just no, we're running out of money, we're running out of runway. We'll go to Blockbuster. We've disrupted, we've given them some opportunities to learn, and they can buy us. can buy us for $50 million. Blockbuster said no. And so you sit there and think, yeah, blind, stupid. Actually, that's, again, not quite the case, because early 2004, John Antioco, the CEO, launched the Total Access strategy. It had 3 elements to it. The first was that they were going to completely cut, not reduce, cut, Control-Alt-Delete, all of their late return fees. So a fundamental business part of their business model, the analysts estimated about $800 million of their revenue was coming from late return fees. They were going to stop it. And they had all kinds of initial test cases of branches, and they were seeing that cutting it actually was bringing in more revenue. Fine, interesting, bold, courageous move. Second thing they were going to do was really go very heavy with leveraging their brick and mortar footprint, because now they had stores all over the States, like I say, all over the world. And these Netflix oaks, yes, you can get a DVD from them, and that's very nice, but then you've got to send it back, and then you've got to wait for the new one, whereas you've got a Blockbuster just around the corner from you. You've finished watching your DVD, come get a new one. So that was the second element. Can anybody take a guess, with the benefit of hindsight, what their third element may have very presciently been in the early 2000s? Thinking about how we consume media today. I'm hearing mutterings. Keep going, yeah. Subscription, keep going. How do we watch media? Streaming. He was going to launch a streaming service over 20 years ago. Analysts thought it was genius. And, like I say, with the benefit of even 20 years hindsight, it's pretty flipping smart. It's very prescient. It's going boldly where the world has now gone. And yet they're bankrupt. Why? Well, Carl Icahn, activist shareholder, he was in the news a few months ago for being an activist shareholder at McDonald's. And he headed up a group of hedge fund managers who had bought out Sumner Redstone's Viacom share of Blockbusters. They were not interested. He was not interested. No matter what the data was showing, we're not doing this. No, we bought this company to get the returns that we were used to. This trajectory needs to go up, and we don't care what the data says. We're not doing this. And if you read some of the stories around this, it actually became almost juvenile, some of the stuff that was going on, the egos that were at play here. But eventually, the directors that were friendly to John Antioco at a shareholders meeting that Carl Icahn called were voted out, and directors friendly to him were voted in. And suddenly you've got a guy who had all the technical answers, who was prepared to go where the world was going, and like I say, we see now has gone, who could do nothing, absolutely nothing. And eventually he left, and that company went under. And so I say this because I love what Rita McGrath says as a strategy guru in a consulting firm. How you think about the future depends on the range of options you're able to entertain, the ability you have to see widely and think widely. Couldn't agree more. Violently agree, in fact. But this is what I say. Your ability to deliver against that future is only a function of how many stakeholders you are able to get on your side. You can see the future, you can have all the analysis in the world, you can have the technically right answer. You don't have the right stakeholders supporting you, or you have the one wrong stakeholder against you. Doesn't matter if you're the smartest person in the room, it's going nowhere. So this stuff matters. So that's political will. Hopefully I've busted a few myths there. Now let me give you 3 things around political skill. The first thing is, for heaven's sake, can we not treat work like school? And I'm busy writing an article on that at the moment. In how many ways, and sadly, particularly for women, this is not my quote, this is a quote from Sally Krawcheck, who's a very successful entrepreneur in the States. And she wrote a fabulous article on LinkedIn a few years ago. She said, "The single biggest mistake I've seen women make at work," was the title of the article. Now, of course, it's not true of all women, and it's not true only of women. We're not some homogenous bunch. But this article struck a chord for me, and when I share it in lectures, it strikes a chord for a lot of women. And she went on to say the single biggest mistake she's seen women make at work is we treat work like school. So we think if we put our head down and work really hard, somebody's going to notice and they're going to give us an A. And I see a few nodding heads, and I see at the back. But it's like a rueful, yes, okay. And I think that that's the flip side. It's the shadow side of, in most countries, the reality is that girls go to school in greater numbers than boys. I mean, yes, South Africa, we've got all kinds of challenges. Let's not even start. But girls go to school in greater numbers than boys. We graduate in higher numbers, and we generally graduate with higher marks. And then the same pattern continues at varsity. And so, of course, all the things that have worked for you for your first 18, 20, 25 years, put your head down, master the material, get your A. I mean, why wouldn't you just carry on with it? But work is not school. At school, you can be independent. It's just you and the material and the teacher are giving you the marks, because the marks are here. At work, you are interdependent. And you need other people to get stuff done. At school, there's one right answer. At work, it's a function of where the power sits as to what the right answer will be. And so on, and so on, and so forth. Article coming soon. Watch this space. But treating work like school is such a fundamental mistake. Second one, for heaven's sake, have people in the room for you. The amount of people I have heard say, no, I don't have to worry about this stuff because my work will speak for itself. I won't ask who in this room may have said that. That's fine. My work will speak for itself. Will allow me to laugh hilariously and hysterically like Moira from Schitt's Creek. I mean, come on. It will not. Okay? Work does not speak. People speak. And so who is speaking for you and what are they saying? That is a function of your political capital. That is a function of the political relationships you have or don't have. And I got some fantastic advice early in my career. Geez, it took me a while to realize the wisdom of it. That some of the, and I would actually change it to say all of the most important decisions of your career, the ones that you're not making yourself, but that are being made for you, are going to be made when you're not in the room. So who is in that room for you? What are they saying? That is not formal stuff, that's informal stuff. That's political stuff. So who is in the room for you? What are they saying? And then the last one is choose your battles. Hey, Winston Churchill said it brilliantly. In war, you can only be killed once. In politics, you can be killed many times. And I'm sure some of us have got some slings and arrows here that were quite painful. Choose your battles. Not everything is a life or death. Not everything is a principled stand that has to be taken up no matter what. Choose them. Live to fight another day. And again, another piece of advice that I give to people now is if you have to choose, and of course you don't always have to, but if you have to choose between being right and being effective, go for being effective, okay? Right can be very relative, right can be very subjective. And I say that bearing in mind, and as distressed as I'm sure all of us are about the context that we work in South Africa, where there's a lot of stuff going wrong, and thank heavens for the whistleblowers who had the courage to say some of the things that they said in this country and whose lives have been destroyed. So I'm not saying let egregious, blatant abuse and that kind of stuff go. Like I say, I think it takes enormous courage to speak out against it. But if you have to choose between being right and being effective, I implore you, go for being effective. Keep those relationships, nurture those relationships, have them at your beck and call for your advantage going forward. Interesting. And so the last thing I want to share is in my full workshop, I've got videos from House of Cards, I've got videos from Game of Thrones. I mean, really, eye-watering stuff, especially the Game of Thrones stuff. It was quite a series. We watched about 5 or 6, my partner and I, in a row, and then we had to watch some Downton Abbey to just clear our mind. Something a little bit more less unsavory. So I'm going to leave you with some wise words from The Office, because I mean, how can you not have something from The Office? And it's short and it's to the point, and I think it pretty much summarizes everything I want you to have taken away from the nuggets I've tried to share.
What is the most inspiring thing I ever said to you?
Don't be an idiot. Changed my life.
Whenever I'm about to do something, I think, would an idiot do that? And if they would, I do not do that thing.
So it's really that simple. Don't be an idiot about this stuff, okay? Don't think that this stuff doesn't matter. Don't think that this stuff is only one thing. Don't tell simple, single stories about it. And don't think that it's something that other people will worry about while you're polishing your badge of virtue and integrity. You can hold on to your virtue, you can hold on to your integrity, and you will be so much more effective when you understand this stuff and you get smart about it. Because as I say, it's not just about you. It is about your team, it's about your stakeholders, it's about the people who are counting on you to be effective. So thanks very much.
To introduce our next speaker today, the key word is boldness, which is one of our values. And boldness, as you just shared, Sarah, it's driven by action. And Zandile has proven that by really living her boldness through her action, by becoming the first Black free diving instructor, breaking stereotypes, and creating her own path. And she's determined to share her passion for the ocean and the world. So today we'll talk a lot about the water and explore people's belief about the ocean and really coexisting with nature as well. And she calls herself, or she's famously known as the Black Mermaid, and has always dreamt of making an impact in the lives of others and really living in their fullest potential and being the happiest as you can be. And with this approach, she's tries to help people break barriers and overcome doubts and really take life strides into achieving their goals. So help me to welcome Zandile as our next speaker.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Andile Ndlovu, and today I want to speak about a world unimagined, from Soweto to the seas, a black mermaid. And so, maybe to start, who am I? I'm an ocean human, I'm a freediver, and I'm a conservationist. My life has become so flooded by love that I could never ever imagine, and it came with finding the sea. Now, how do we start? I grew up in Soweto. I grew up nowhere near the sea. We did not have ocean-inspired trips. There was this whole big world that existed, and I often say, you know, when you live in Soweto, you come from this very big brown world, and then when you start to work and you get into, you know, a really good job, you are able to afford a little bit of suburbia, these greens. And when I got to the ocean, I did not realize that that world of blue would absolutely knock me open, like it was late for me and everybody else. And so this was the first time that I got to see the sea. I was 12 years old, and my mom said, we need to go see my dad, and her dad lived by the ocean. But what is interesting is there was fear. As we got into the water, when the water got to your knees, you get pulled out the water while you're trying to kill yourself. And so the narratives of how we grew up said that we should not be anywhere near the sea, right? And it was the internal narratives that said, it's an ancestral space, there's a snake that lives there, it's a place that takes people. But also it came from a place that said, none of us had ever experienced the ocean in any kind of way. And so how do we get to, you know, becoming the world's mermaid? To some extent. 2016, I'm going through the most. Get into, book a flight to Bali, and in the first week, I'm doing all kinds of other things, and in the second week, I'm riding down to breakfast, and this guy's like, snorkel trip, snorkel trip. I think I've always wanted to do that. Let me sign up. So I sign up, and it was crazy because the fear when you leave shore is something that I could never ever tell anybody, because here I am, a black girl, so far from home, and if anything happens, my family will be like, what were you doing? Where were you going to even begin? And so there's this whole fear, and you know, Sarah spoke about swell. I did not even know that swell was a thing until I saw this wall of water next to the boat, right? And then the skipper says, everybody please put on your life vests. Did I have a life vest? No. It was extra. You had to pay extra to get the life vest. So I was like, and so I just remember thinking, oh my word. And this guy says to me, you know, what are you going to do? I'm like, if this boat capsizes, I'm going to be the first one back. I can guarantee you that, right? Little did I know that perhaps there was something there. But what's important is, as I jump out into the water, but maybe a few steps back, we get to our first snorkel spot. There were 3 spots. The skipper says, everybody kit up. I didn't know what that meant. So I'm looking around, I'm trying to see what everybody else is doing. And the lady sitting opposite me says, have you ever been snorkeling before? I say, no. She's like, why didn't you say anything? I'm like, I would have figured it out. I come from Soweto, you know? You know? And to be honest, I wouldn't have figured it out. And as she held up the mask and she said, this mask is going to close your nose and you won't be able to breathe in through your nose. And this is a snorkel. This means that you can look underneath while breathing. I was 28 years old. And so as I jump out into the water, I don't know how I don't gash my head open, but what follows is, I'm drowning, whole freak out. And it's dramatic because you're the only black person on the boat, but it's also dramatic because you're not really drowning, oh my word. And I realized that the fear for me sat in the fact that I could not touch the bottom of the ocean. So where do I go? And this other lady turns around and she says, it's physically impossible to drown, girl. Like, I'm dying. And I don't die, and I follow the group, and I look beneath the surface, and my whole life changes. I don't understand what's going on, but the bottom of the ocean looked like it had this light that was coming up. It looked like it was lit up from beneath, the way the sun was landing. And there were these incredible yellows that were yellow fish, moray eels. So much was going on in this moment, and I thought, what's going on? And our dive master keeps on diving in and coming up with these beautiful shells. And I'm like, wait, what's going on? They're so shiny. Who does the shining work around here? Like, there were just so many unknowns. And somewhere along the way, I decided to follow our guide in. And I hold my breath for something like 5 seconds. My life changes. I'd finally found home. That feeling that lands your body, that I finally arrived, there's a place where I actually belong. And that is my story. But then I come back into South Africa and I say to everyone, what do I do after the snorkel trip? What happens after this? And everyone says, you start scuba diving, of course. And so I start scuba diving. And it was the most incredible world, but in the years that followed, was again realizing that that feeling of home didn't quite live there. Scuba diving felt like you're in a bus, and to the left is your turtle, to your right is your sharks. It was amazing. It was the idea that you could be underwater breathing while witnessing incredible worlds. You were breathing underwater. It was crazy. But again, there was the seeking. Where's that feeling? Where is it? I get on Instagram and I see these girls, they're diving and they don't have tanks on their backs. And I think, what kind of daylight witchery is this? I want in, you know? And in this daylight witchery from my first course, holding my breath beneath the water, there it was. And in that was a knowing that I didn't only want to enjoy this world for myself, I wanted to teach and I wanted to tell anybody who could listen. I was horrible to be around for probably a year after that. You could not stop me talking about the ocean. But one of the things that then happened was a realization that I was always the only black person on the boat as a guest, all the time. And so you're always faced with narratives that are unhelpful. You're already holding your own narratives. Black people don't swim. Are you going to dive with all of that hair? You can't fit into a wetsuit because it's not quite made for, you know? And so you're continuously saying, how do we create change? How do we bring more people to the space? But most importantly, where I came from, I wanted black people to experience the beauty of feeling free in your skin, in your body, and in your existence. And what does it mean to continuously say, I will not assimilate, and I'm going to become a normative? Black people are water people too. I'm not okay with the current narrative. And so I founded the Black Mermaid Foundation. For a few reasons, it started with kids. First, all of my friends told me I was crazy. They told me all the time, why are you doing white people things? And anytime we had anytime there was a challenge anywhere, everyone was just quick to say, that's what happens when you do white people stuff. But then I knew that children are a beautiful place, a beautiful canvas where they are an incredible tool for change. They are young, they're going to be future presidents, business leaders, they're going to do amazing things. And if we just invest that coin, have that moment that I had in 2016 in Bali, just a little bit younger, so that they'd be less afraid, maybe they'd bite, right? And then so we'd see diverse representation in careers, we'd see diverse representation in sport, we'd see diverse representation recreationally, we would see a change in how Black and brown communities interface with the water. And so for me, that was my whole vibe. But then there was again the question of how do I face my fears? When I was becoming a freediving instructor, I had so many fears. So I want to take you through a walk of what that looked like. To become a freediving instructor, you need to learn to dive to 32 meters deep beneath the surface on one breath. So you take a big, beautiful breath, and that's all you have to go down to the bottom of the ocean with. There's so much that goes on in there. But in my little group, everyone's like, I've been swimming since I was 5, I've been diving since I was 5, and I've been at this for all of 5 minutes, right? And there were so many fears. I had the biggest breath hold, could hold my breath easily for over 4 minutes. But I could not get myself past 23 meters. I was afraid. I was afraid of a few things, and I had to walk to that fear. One, it was the fear of what ultimately lives in the water. There was so much there. Am I going to see my ancestors down there, and do I run? Do I say, hey, what's up? And there was a fear that what would happen if I ran out of breath? Ultimately, in freediving, there is no fail-safe space. If you run out of breath, you swallow the ocean. And when you swallow the ocean, that's tickets, right? And so you get to a place where you need to touch your fear. And for me, in touching my fear, because 23 meters, I could not move past it. Got back to Joburg, and I got off the line and I took off my computer because I had to learn to bend with the water. I had to learn her voice. How dare I show up and tell her that I want to be an instructor when I don't even know her? And so in that time was learning to be with my body, learning to be with the water, and ultimately learning to bend with her, and that changed everything for me. And so here is my life's work. Here is my heart. The Black Mermaid Foundation, the idea would be what would happen if we created access to ocean spaces, because proximity doesn't equate to access. What does it mean for us to expand the narratives that lives within our bodies about what lives in the ocean and the possibilities that live around there and who the ocean belongs to? I would hope that from this we would expand dreams to see marine biologists and commercial divers that are black too. For me, for the kids, it was the whole idea that if we build access, we would create a connection. And this connection would make the ocean feel like home. And when that ocean feels like home, you will protect it, right? And so we're all talking about the challenges of what our oceans are facing, but we can't save the oceans with only 10% of people becoming the change, or 30 or 40. We need all hands on deck. And those little people, these little people, are going to be critical in the decisions that we make as we move forward. And so Sia, the young one, oh, there, on the right, on this side, on the right. Sia is amazing. Sia has been with me since 2020 when we started this journey. Sia comes on every single snorkel excursion when I take the kids out. To watch how Sia has changed, how he calls me and he says, when are we going out again? To see how he tries to outhold my breath and to see how he tries to race me on apnea is really something beautiful to watch, because through him, I'm seeing a world change. And so here's Sia on the right here, and here are the girls having the time of their lives. And so I want to chat about discovery. What have I discovered in the ocean? Aside from finally making my own film, moving to a space of storytelling, because I have this belief that if we're going to tell stories, the stories need to look like us as well. They need to be nuanced and they need to land in ways that invite everybody to come to the table. That's one. Two, I want to share 3 of the things that have happened in my life that made this space so incredible. When we filmed Shark Woman for Discovery Channel's Shark Week, it was the most incredible thing because I got to see a great white shark for the first time. She was massive, right? People think great white sharks are like really long. Yeah, that they are. Until they turn around and their girth is like the size of a car. And you look at her face and you think, she could out me. And that for me was the most incredible experience, because when you look at South Africa, we've always been known as the home of white sharks, and yet they're running out, and they're running out quickly. We have a problem. And what does it mean to belong to these world's oceans, this country's oceans? And I would tell a story of never ever having seen her white sharks. And so that was incredible. There is no thriving humanity without thriving oceans. Sarah's already told us about our breath, our everything. But she's also so much, we don't think about how she's our food source, she's our freshwater source. She is life as we know it. She is oxygen when we're running and we're doing all the things that we love. And so going back to the experiences that I've had underwater, diving with dolphins. Dolphins are incredible, they're so majestic, and it's amazing how when you communicate with them, they communicate back to you. So when you're free diving, and obviously not quite on scuba, so on scuba you're a little bit loud, but when you're free diving and you dive down and you make a sound in your throat, they come around you and they start like getting back, like that sound that you heard in the beginning, it happens over and over again. And then you get to play, and it's the most incredible world. Whether you're all swimming up to the top and you jump out the water and back in, it's really the most incredible world. But I also want to share something that changed my life. It might be a little bit light, so just try and look out for it. Can you see this little fin, or big fin? So this was a big humpback whale and a baby humpback whale. And it's incredible because when you see how big humpback whales are, you never think that they're ever this tiny, where they are babies and they don't even know how to use their flukes yet. And for me, these were incredible moments. When we were making my film, we had an incredible encounter with another humpback whale baby. She came up to our boat, and we didn't think that she would let us be with her, but she did. And as I jumped into the water, there she was on her back. And as I got close to her, she made this big turn, and you could just see the white of her belly. It was probably the most transformative moments for me. And so, what are my learnings? Number 1, it's never too late to start. So my learnings are for. It's never too late to start. I was 28 years old. I came from Soweto. By all odds, it did not make sense that I would live the world that I do today, that I'm known as a freediver, speak across the world about my experience, but also the idea that I would have an ocean-inspired foundation, one of the only, actually, that are led and founded by a black woman. Second, boldly touch your fears. The idea that anything that you try and hide away from becomes even bigger. But anything that you touch, you begin to know its corners, you know how it smells. Anytime when you're afraid, you can actually go there and say, fear is not the only thing that is here. There is also excitement, there's also awe, there's also curiosity. And I'm here for that entire journey that says, fear, I don't deny you being here, but you're not the only one, and you're not going to steal the stage. The gift of the present, which is what Sarah also spoke about. Freediving teaches you to be present. It's not about how you start your dive when you're going down to the bottom of the ocean. It does matter. But when you're sitting at about 15, 16 meters, you don't have the energy to think about how badly you started that dive. Neither do you have the energy to think about where you're going. You've got 15 more meters to go. When you get down to the bottom, you don't get to look up and wonder how much further I have to go, because when you think about fear, she will show up every chance she can. And so when you've got more water above you than you could ever imagine, what does it mean to be with your body? As your body thuds, it's telling you, I want to breathe and I want to breathe now. All of a sudden, this autonomic vibe where your body has always breathed on cue, told by the large human in your head, all of a sudden you say, no, I'm going to take the reins from here. You can tell me I need to breathe, but I'm not breathing, and I'm not breathing now. And you tell your body that I can feel you thudding, screaming for breath, but you just got to wait a little bit. Changes something about you. But also in the present is knowing that at the bottom of the ocean, anything can come. In Sodwana Bay, you will often come across bull sharks. Bull sharks are bold. Bull sharks will bite, but bull sharks will also challenge you. And so when you get down to the bottom, it is always agreed that you don't leave your dive till too late. You leave just enough for the bull shark. And so when you come up and there's a bull shark with you, you can't break for the surface. You have to be with the bull shark. So you slowly ascend together, eye to eye. It breaks the eye contact. You don't break the eye contact. And I think that's when you realize that anytime when you come across anything that could make you afraid, the only option is not to run. You could also just pause and face, right? And when you are with that moment and you hold that discomfort and you hold that fear, and of course, your heartbeat cannot go up through the roof because you only have a finite amount of oxygen. So for me, that was another thing. What does it mean to be present in my body, in the discomfort, and in whatever I will encounter? I'm never in danger. I'm competent, I know what I'm doing, but also to be free enough to release. There are many things that can happen outside of this. Gotta be okay too, play your dice. And the last of it for me was go together. We really are powerful in our dreams and in our ability to co-create, but when we go together, we go further. But also there's space to be held in your vulnerabilities, but also in your fear, because the only narrative that we are is not only strong. We are many things, but we are not only strong. And this is a power and a superpower for me to remain vulnerable. Thank you.
To introduce our next speaker. As everyone knows, our theme this year for the IWD for Johannesburg is boldly going where others haven't treaded before. And I think when we spoke about that theme, it felt right to bring people who really have been doing things that no one has done before. And our next speaker, Sarah, is a great example of that. Sarah is a retired national swimmer, and wait for this, she holds a Guinness World Record for becoming the first person, not the first woman, but the first person to circumvent the Easter Island, which are between Chile, so basically as you go through the Pacific Ocean towards South America. And she uses her passion and talent in pioneering extreme swimming and creates a platform to educate and inspire people. And I'm happy to welcome Sarah to share some of her lessons around going where others haven't been before.
I'm Sarah Ferguson. I swim for a cause. I swim for my faith. I swim for the ocean.
In 2009, I found myself in India after having retired from competitive swimming, and I was working for a wealthy businessman and politician, and I was traveling like a rock star. I was traveling in private helicopters and airplanes, and I was having the time of my life. It was an incredible experience, doing things that I had never done before. I was also busy trying to train for my final international competition, and I found it was quite challenging to train between working and traveling around the world. And I found myself in really bizarre training places. So the one time I found myself in a hotel indoor 50-meter pool in China. And another time I was in a palace pool surrounded by horses in India. And I got to finish off my career swimming the 100 meters individual medley in Singapore in the final. It's a race that I don't normally do. And it was a really fitting way to end my career as a professional swimmer. India's an incredible place. It's an onslaught of your senses. It's full of people, it's full of animals, smells, sounds, and also, unfortunately, litter. And I didn't know it at the time, but this picture was going to change the trajectory of my life. Yeah, so I've asked to speak to you about being bold. And being bold means going where someone has not gone before. It's doing something despite pain and fear of the unknown in order to try and create change. And I'm here to share my journey about becoming bold and how you survive being bold. And my journey was part of a process of growing my conviction so much so that I had no choice but to do something about it. And so from India, I ended up in Hawaii, which is literally a complete contrast. You're going from a place of noise and filth and an onslaught on your senses to this beautiful, remote, tropical, pristine island far away. And it was there that I was invited to swim my very first ocean race, and I fell in love with the ocean. I also got to see a turtle for the first time, so it's very hard not to fall in love with the ocean when you get to see these amazing creatures. And in India, in Hawaii, after that race, I was overlooking over the sea, and I saw an island in the distance. And I wondered to myself if anyone had ever swum there before. And I thought it was a bit of a mad thought, but I was reading a book by Lewis Pugh at the time, who is an ocean advocate. He swims in Antarctica in a speedo only to create awareness for climate change. And that was a really inspiring story for me, and I thought to myself, I'd like to do something similar one day. And when I finished traveling, I spent some time traveling the world. I returned to South Africa, and everything went pear. I was starting my dream job as a physiotherapist, setting up my own practice. I was trying different sports. I had a great social life, but I felt empty inside. And I went into a spate of depression, and it was really tough for me because I didn't understand why I was feeling nothing. No one had died. Nothing tragic had happened. I had retired 2 years ago, so how could I only now be dealing with post-retirement? And so I reached out to my sports psychologist and realized that I was actually dealing with retiring from competitive swimming only 2 years later. And so through a process of digging deep and researching and really trying to figure out my identity outside of being an athlete, I said to her that I wanted to do something with my love and talent for swimming that was bigger than myself. And I felt that my career as an athlete wasn't over, but I didn't know what that meant. I knew that I had more to give. And so we did a lot of talking and prep and soul searching. to figure out what would be a big enough cause to throw the rest of my life at. And there are three major things affecting our ocean today, and those are overfishing, climate change, and plastic pollution. And so with my experience of India in the back of my mind and my absolute hate of litter, as well as the lack of awareness around plastic pollution, because at the time it wasn't the global crisis that it is today. This was in about 2013. I saw the gap and I decided to step up to the mark. And I did some research and I discovered that by 2050 there will be more plastic than fish in the ocean. And this made my heart sink. It really made me so upset and angry that our ocean is becoming a rubbish dump for the animals and the marine life because of our negligence and lack of understanding. And we've become so disconnected from nature. I also discovered that most of the oxygen that we need to breathe doesn't actually come from trees. More than 70% of the oxygen that we need to breathe comes from the ocean. And it comes from phytoplankton that is floating on the ocean surface that produces most of that oxygen. And that phytoplankton is being suffocated by plastic. And so as I look back on my life, I realize that this is something that's always been in me. I used to win the recycling competitions at school. I've always hated litter, and I've always had a deep love of nature and an affinity for marine life. And I remember having a conversation with my psychologist, realizing that if I took this step, it would make me into a public figure. And being somewhat of an introvert, this was not a step that would come naturally for me. But the conviction and the cause was big enough for me to be able to take that step. And that was my first step into becoming bold. And so I decided to do my first channel crossing. And I was absolutely terrified. Sure, I grew up in Cape Town where there's an ocean, but my experience of the ocean was a small beach with small waves and calm seas. I'd never swum in the ocean, open ocean before, and I was absolutely terrified. I had no idea how to even begin to prepare to swim a marathon on the other side of the world through treacherous waters. And this was my first step in the journey to educate the world on the evils of plastic pollution. And in order to be bold, you need conviction. And for me, that is to eliminate throwaway plastic pollution. And it is a conviction that God has planted so deeply inside of me that everything that I do in my life revolves around trying to make that a reality. And it was something that I had to keep on revisiting when times got tough, because I would question why, when I was going through tough times, why am I doing this to myself when it is so, so hard? But the mind plays tricks on you. It's easy to give up, but it is the why that keeps on helping me keep going. And so this is me on the beach in Hawaii before my very first channel crossing. And what this photo doesn't tell you is that it took me 5 years of preparation to be able to do that crossing. And it was incredibly tough. It was depressing at times. And there were very many challenges and setbacks. I had no clue what I was doing. I had to do a lot of research. And one of my challenges was trying to find a team to go with me and do this crazy thing. I also had to fundraise for the three of us to get there. And it was really daunting trying to do all of this when at the time less than 50 people had swum this channel in the world. And the team comprised of myself, my kayaker, and my coach. And all three of us were novices, and all three of us were terrified. And we flew over to Hawaii, not having a clue what to expect, not knowing if we would make it, and if we did make it, what that would even mean. Because we all went there going, okay, I'm going to swim a channel, and I'm going to do it, and it's going to help change the world. But how? And so one of my major fears was encountering the Portuguese man-of-war, which are these giant blue bottles, and their stings are so painful, it's like going into a hornet's nest and being stung. Their tentacles get stuck on you, and it's really difficult to get them off, and it can lead to anaphylactic shock where you can't breathe anymore. Another one of my big fears was the infamous shore break. Hawaii is known for powerful waves, and I'm terrified of big waves. And my coach used to joke with me that the only reason I took her with was to help me get through the big waves at the end of my swim. So we were, as you can see from that photo, terrified. We had to fly to the beginning of the swim. So just to fly over this open ocean for 45 minutes looking down and then knowing that I have to swim back is insane. And so we got there and we start swimming at night because we want to try and have the best opportunity to finish in daylight so that I didn't have to deal with that crazy shore break. And so it's 11 o'clock at night. It is pitch black. I want you guys to imagine load shedding at night when there's no stars and there's no moon in the sky. I couldn't even see my hand in front of my face. It was terrifying. But the first 20 minutes I got into the water, it was warm, it was calm, it was beautiful. As I put my hand into the water, there was bioluminescence just igniting off my hand as it entered. It was creating sparks. It was beautiful. And then I hit the open ocean. And there were waves crashing over me from the side. It was pushing me skew. I swam into a tiger shark. And within an hour, I started to get seasick. And I was vomiting. And for 90 minutes, I couldn't keep any food down. And it's like you can't drive from here to Cape Town on an empty tank of petrol. It's the same for swimming. You need fuel to be able to finish swimming a marathon. And so we had tried Valoids. No, it didn't help. I just kept throwing it back up. But thankfully, my kayaker had a trick up his sleeve, which is a Valoid suppository. I don't go anywhere without them anymore. So he gave it to my coach, who put it in her mouth. Now, you know, I understand that it is dark. There's waves. It's big waves. It's big swell. There are sharks around me. There's a storm nearby. And I must now take this Valoid suppository. She handed it to me and said, "You've got to do this." And I was like, absolutely shocked and horrified. I'm like, I don't know how to do this. She said, "Put your knees up and just put it where it needs to go." So I managed to do so. And within 10 minutes, I felt normal again. I was able to keep my food down. And I was able to continue swimming. And the next hurdle came when I hit the shelf. And you can see on that photo, it's not a straight line. I swam from the green dot to the red dot. Over there, there's a little shelf. And I was swimming up until that point at 24 minutes per mile. And for those of you that understand swimming or know of the mid-mile mile, which is the world's largest open water race, your top swimmers will swim a mile in under 20 minutes. Your above average swimmers will be between 22 and 30 minutes. And most people take over 30 minutes to swim a mile. So I was going at about 24 minutes a mile, and I had done about 15 kilometers already. And then I hit the shelf, which is where the water depth changes from 700 meters to 70 meters, and I hit it at the change of tide. So I was swimming against the tide, which is like trying to swim upstream of a fast-flowing river. I was hardly moving, and my team were freaking out. And it was a very challenging time, but I just had kept, all my research had said to me, the channel's not over until your feet hit dry land, until you run out of water. And in my head, it was going around in a loop. It's not over till it's over. I just have to keep putting one stroke in front of the other. And the thing that got me through that was process. And that's one of the first points that I want to share with you about staying bold, is process. And one of the things that I read is that you never ask how much further you have left. You just got to keep swimming. And so I broke it down into steps. And step one was just to get to the next feed. I just had to get to the next feed. Step two, I needed just to focus on each stroke, focus on my breathing, stay present. That was step three, was to stay present. Just be in the moment. And step four was to remember why I was doing it. And that's what got me through. It was ironic that in the end we finished on a different beach to the crazy shorebreak beach. So I didn't even need my coach. And we did an extra 18 kilometers. I'm going to show you a little video now.
There was a point where I didn't know how I was going to carry on. I'm the first woman on the continent to conquer the Kaiwi Channel between the Hawaiian Islands. It's known as the Channel of Bones because a lot of people have lost their lives in that channel. At one point, the ledge creates this turbulent water underneath it, and I was stuck on there for 3.5 hours. It pushed me off course by 18 kilometers. Thankfully, a preparation came into play, and just being able to get through that, because at one point I didn't know if I could carry on. I could never have imagined the feeling afterwards of completing those 42 kilometers. My intention was to raise awareness for Breathe. Breathe focuses on educating the public on plastic pollution. I want to encourage people to conserve the sea's inhabitants. The ocean brings life, and my life has always been the ocean. When you do something for someone other than yourself, the rewards are unimaginable.
So the second thing that helps you to stay bold is team. And Mother Teresa has this amazing quote which says that none of us, including me, ever do great things, but we can all do small things with great love, and together we can do something wonderful. And so for me, my team is essential in enabling me to do what I do. And so after that swim in Hawaii, I thought, that's great. It's a clean, beautiful ocean, very far away. Where can I go in the world that's really going to show the world why I swim? And so I did some research, and I found out that the South Pacific Gyre, which is this massive ocean current, washes up a whole bunch of microplastic and debris onto a little island called Easter Island. And because of that, Easter Island has got the highest concentration of microplastics in the world. And none of those pieces of plastic are from the island itself. And this was a devastating fact to me. And it's like going to your home and opening your front door and finding a stranger's rubbish in your house. You don't litter, maybe you even recycle, but it is there. It's not yours, but that is what it's like for the marine animals, and that is what it's like for the people on the island. It's not their rubbish, but they're affected by it, and it's not fair. And so for me, teamwork is vital. And so we did the research, and I decided I was going to swim around the island. No one had ever successfully completed that swim before. One man had attempted it and failed after 26 hours of swimming. But I, through a team of people from over 8 different countries around the world, successfully circumnavigated that island, swimming 63.5 kilometers in 19 hours and 8 minutes and setting a Guinness World Record. It was one of the toughest swims, or the toughest swims I had done to date. And one of the reasons why it was so tough is because of the salt. The salt content was so high that I was literally taking chunks of Vaseline and trying to coat my mouth with it to try and stop it penetrating. Because of that, my throat started swelling up and I had difficulty breathing. But because I had a team of people each working to their strengths, we were able to achieve a world first. So I had my coach literally watching every stroke, and every time she saw that I was out of rhythm, she would offer to jump in the water with me. She would tell me to focus on my breathing, concentrate on my stroke. I had a kayaker next to me making sure that I was going in a straight line, avoiding blue bottles. And I had a doctor, when I told him that my throat was swelling up, he went and paddled directly to the doctor on the support boat, who came to me, gave me a bronchodilator. They radioed the shore, had the hospital ready to wait so that when I arrived, I could get checked out. We had a team from Plastic Oceans doing a beach cleanup while I was swimming, engaging with the local community so that when I finished, we had locals waiting to welcome me back to shore. And we had the Navy from Chile in an extra boat, which had specialized equipment in case something went really wrong really quickly. And so most people do one crazy thing in their lives, but people who have teams continue doing great things throughout their lives. And I know that nothing big is ever achieved on your own. Team is everything. And I literally, every time I swim, my safety is in their hands, and their role is crucial to my success. And my final point is a quote by Louis Pugh, which says, "Luck or success is where opportunity meets preparation." And when I do these swims, I have to adhere to the official English Channel rules, which means you have to start and finish on land. You're not allowed to touch the boat at any point in time. You're only allowed to wear a normal swimming costume, goggles, and cap. And you have to feed by treading water. And when I feed, every 30 minutes, my coach will throw me my food and some drink on a piece of string, and I will eat and drink it. And I have to eat every 30 minutes. And when I'm doing a stage swim, which is a swim over multiple days, the preparation is even more intense because I'm eating every 30 minutes while I'm in the water. When I'm out the water, I'm eating every 2 hours. And then I have to prepare all the food for the next day, multiple days. And many times when I'm doing these swims, I have to put on weight. So that's challenging. So the following footage that I'm going to show you now shows some footage during the sardine run, which I had the privilege of experiencing a few years ago. And the sardine run is when it's one of the Earth's greatest migrations, when the sardines move up the coast due to seasonal changes. And it's a feeding frenzy between whales, dolphins, marine birds, sharks, where they basically unite together and cause this amazing frenzy. For you, those of you that don't know, that was the sound of whales that you could hear in that video. And that was a bittersweet moment for me. I was surrounded by whale song in this beautiful natural environment in absolute filth. And that is why I need to be bold, and that is why I continue being bold. These things, these marine animals, along with my team and the preparation we put into these swims, enable me to continue fighting for a cleaner ocean. And I want to finish off with one of my favorite quotes by George Washington Carver, which says, "When you do the common things of the world in an uncommon way, you will command the attention of the world." I swim, I love it, I'm good at it, and I do it in such a way, and I do world first, to inspire people to live deeply and tread lightly, so that our next generation can enjoy having a thriving natural environment. You guys have the ability to do the same. Thank you.
To truly make lasting change, and for all three of you and for all of us in the room, we've had to push beyond our comfort zone at some point. Not only to bravely go where people have feared to go before, but to actually start going there, I think is quite different. So we live in unprecedented times from a global turbulence perspective. Really, equality has moved down the agenda, the environment has moved up, but still with a deepened sense of how unequal things are across the board. And years from now, or decades even, will be known as the time that was the most violent, that was the most discriminatory, if you think about the spaces, with global inequality almost at an all-time high. We also will be known as the one with the most change, people that have boldly gone where no one has tread before and forged a new way forward. So there's opportunity in that. So although it would take 132 years to close the gender gap, given the pace at which it slipped, the reality is we have the opportunity as individuals in this room to be part of making that gap smaller today in everything we do. So we need to encourage courageous, difficult conversations with leaders in our workplace, in our communities, in our societies. Ask the questions that are difficult and expect answers, and present ourselves and others with the right opportunities. So how do we leverage our curiosity to really be bold? I'm not so sure about the shark curiosity in the spaces, but there are elements around navigating corporate politics which sometimes feels like you are the prey in the process. How we work together to create not only the safe spaces that learn and grow, but actually take others with us, which is what you've done. How we contribute to rebuilding and strengthening the organizations and the communities we live in, and more. And how we support disadvantaged segments. Each of you, whether it's your delegates, it's the coaching, it's your schools, it's the opportunity around Breathe, have taken someone with you. You have left with a hand up and not a hand out, which changes the world forever. And how do we share more stories that inspire and actually motivate action? I would like the three of you to please volunteer with Derek Watts to do a stint on Carte Blanche on Sunday night to set the tone for a really positive week. Because we are advocates and need to act, not just speak about it, for positive change in our businesses, our societies, and our communities. For women and men all over the world, the 8th of March is a time to take stock. It's a time to amplify as a collective world what International Women's Day really means. It belongs to everyone. It belongs to men, to women, to our environment. It belongs to change makers. So thank you to you, Neven, Sarah, and Zandilia for bringing to life what a more equal world could look like. It's not that we don't have a bias or stereotypes or discrimination. It's that they are not complete pictures. All of you told stories about your journeys that changed what that picture or assumed picture was to how holistically you show up in a different space. A world where we all belong, diverse, equitable, inclusive human beings that extend that love to our environment. And so, thank you for being the strength that we value, that we celebrate, for your diversity in approach, in navigating politics all round, in the oceans and on land, which we would need to do, and for your commitment to help people step in and express themselves too. You are upstream reciprocity lived. which I think is incredible. So thank you for joining us, all of you, for being here today, for the role you all play and continue to play in terms of how we forge this way forward as South African, as Africans on the continent, and beyond. Collectively, we will go where no others have gone before. We will go where people have not tread or dared to tread. We will be bold. We will make change. So I'd like you to stand up, everyone. I'd like you not only to give the speakers, thank you remarkable ladies, for your wise words, wisdom, and the call to action that you shared. Our IWD Carney team who are in the room, and to all those that made this happen today, and to ourselves, a really warm round of applause. Not often do you stand and step back and say, we are here to make the difference, and we will. So thank you.